home tonight, which is great that there's not too much crowd. We want to hear that laughter, and we really enjoy the laughing, so let your yucks out. My name is Linda Treach. I'm the executive director of BarnArts, and it's also been my privilege to direct this play. I've worked with 8 actors and a crew of about 5, and we've had such a lovely time exploring Oscar Wilde. It's just been a delight to explore his language, to find the jokes that we didn't even notice the first 15 times you read the play, and also seeing them acted. I constantly hear a line anew, and if you had the time to really look carefully at every line, you would never stop laughing. But you have to catch up at some point. So, in any case, BarnArts is a small nonprofit based here in Barnard. We do music and theater programming year-round. If you aren't familiar with us, you might like to see what else we're doing this year. I think you all got our season postcards in your programs. We also are a nonprofit, so we rely on donations from our community to help us thrive and offer this great work. It does cost more money to put on a show like this than we bring in at the door, because we want our tickets to be affordable for our community. And we appreciate your donations of any kind that just show that you recognize our work, and also you get your name in our program, which is, you don't have to be an actor, you can be a few housekeeping details. There are the two exit doors in the front of the building. There's also an exit on the back if there were an emergency. Please turn off any sounds that might be on your cell phones. Although I'm sure all your laughter will crowd out any peripheral noises. It still is good to not have extra beeps along in the audience. The play is 3 acts, and the first act is about 40 to 45 minutes. The second act is a little longer, and the third act comes in at a very speedy 30 minutes. So get to the second intermission, and you're like, okay, 30 more minutes, we can do it. It's really fun. Actually, the final act just flies by because everything's swirling in Oscar Wilde fashion. We will take an intermission for each of the breaks just because we have to change over the set, and it's about 10 to 12 minutes that it takes us to do that. We also are offering concessions that are tied to our show. We have mint tea, but also we have muffins and cucumber sandwiches and tea cakes. So at one of the intermissions, make sure you check out the lovely food. A few of our actors have really taken on making this food. They really wanted to have the whole thing, and they've been making it and bringing it for rehearsals and for the audience, and everything is delicious. And I think that's all I have to say. It's been a little bit long of a speech, so enjoy the show.
Did you hear what I was playing, Lane?
I didn't think it polite to listen, sir.
I'm sorry for that for your sake. I don't play accurately. Anyone can play accurately. But I play with a wonderful expression. As far as the piano is concerned, sentiment is my forte. I keep science for life.
Yes, sir.
And speaking of the science of life, have you got the cucumber sandwiches cut for Lady Bracknell?
Yes, sir.
Oh, by the way, Lane, I see from your book that on Thursday night, when Lord Shorman and Mr. Worthing were dining with me, 8 bottles of champagne are entered as having been consumed.
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint.
Why is it that at a bachelor's establishment, the service almost invariably drink the champagne. I ask merely for information.
I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine, sir. I have often observed in married households that the champagne is rarely of a first-rate brand.
Good heavens! Is marriage so demoralizing as that?
I believe it is a very pleasant state, sir. I have not had much experience with it myself up to the present. I've only been married once. That was in consequence to a misunderstanding between myself and a young person.
I don't know that I am much interested in your family life, Lane.
No, sir. It isn't a very interesting subject. I never think of it myself.
Very natural, I'm sure. That will do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. Really, if the lower orders don't set us a good example, what on earth is the use of them? They seem, as a class, to have absolutely no sense of moral responsibility.
Mr. Ernest Worthing.
How are you, my dear Ernest? What brings you up to town?
Oh, pleasure. What else bring one anywhere? Eating as usual. I see, Algie.
I believe it is customary in good society to take some slight refreshment at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since last Thursday?
In the country.
What on earth do you do there?
When one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It's excessively boring.
And who are the people you amuse?
Oh, neighbors.
You got nice neighbors in your Polish Russia?
Perfectly horrid. Never speak to one of them.
How immensely you must amuse them. By the way, Shropshire is your county, is it not?
Eh? Shropshire? Yes, of course. Hello. Why all these cups? Oh, why cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance in one so young? Who is coming to tea?
Oh, merely Aunt Augusta and Gwendolyn.
Oh, how perfectly delightful.
Yes, that is all very well, but I'm afraid Aunt Augusta won't quite approve of your being here.
May I ask why?
My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolyn is perfectly disgraceful. It is almost as bad as the way Gwendolyn flirts with you.
I'm in love with Gwendolyn. I've come up to town expressly to propose to her.
I thought you'd come up for pleasure. I call that business.
How utterly unromantic you are.
I really don't see anything romantic in proposing. It is very romantic to be in love, but there's nothing romantic about a definite proposal. Why, one may be accepted. One usually is, I believe, and then the excitement is all over. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. If I get married, I'll certainly try to forget the facts.
I've no doubt about that, dear Algie. The divorce court was specially invented for people whose memories are so curiously constituted.
There is no use speculating on that subject. Divorces are made in heaven. Please, don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. They are ordered specially for Aunt Augusta.
Well, you have been eating them all this time.
That is quite a different matter. She's my aunt. Have some bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn is devoted to bread and butter.
That's very good bread and butter, it is too.
Oh, my dear fellow, you need not eat as if you're going to eat at all. You behave as if you were married to her already. You are not married to her already, and I don't think you ever will be.
Why on earth do you say that?
In the first place, girls never marry men they flirt with. Girls don't think it right.
That is nonsense.
It isn't. It is a great truth. It accounts for the extraordinary number of bachelors that one sees all over the place. In the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent.
My dear fellow, Gwendolyn is my first cousin. And before I allow you to marry her, you will have to clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? What on earth do you mean? What do you mean, Algy, by Cecily? I don't know anyone with the name of Cecily.
Bring me that cigarette case Mr. Worthing left in the smoking room the last time he dined here.
Yes, sir.
Do you mean to say you've had my cigarette case this whole time? I wish to goodness you'd let me know. I've been writing frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. Very nearly offering a large reward.
Well, I wish you would offer one. I happen to be more than usually hard up.
There's no good offering a large reward now that the thing is found.
I think that is rather mean of you, Ernest, I must say. However, it makes no matter, for now that I look at the inscription inside, I find that the thing isn't yours after all.
Of course it's mine. You've seen me with it 100 times. You've no right whatsoever to read what's written inside. It's a very ungentlemanly thing to read a private cigarette case.
Oh, it is absurd to have a hard and fast rule about what one should read and what one shouldn't. More than half of modern culture depends on what one shouldn't read.
I'm quite aware of the fact, and I don't propose to discuss modern culture. This isn't quite the sort of thing one should talk of in private. I simply want my cigarette case back.
Yes, but this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case is a present from someone of the name of Cecily. And you said you didn't know anyone of that name.
Well, if you want to know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt.
Yes, charming old lady she is too. Lives in Tunbridge Wells. Just get back to me, Algy.
But why does your aunt call herself Little Cecily? If she lives in Tunbridge Wells. From Little Cecily with her fondest love.
My dear fellow, what on earth is there in that? Some aunts are tall, some aunts are not tall. That doesn't matter. Surely an aunt may be allowed to decide for herself. You seem to think that every aunt should be exactly like your aunt. That is absurd. For heaven's sake, just get back to me, Algy.
Yes, but why does your aunt call you her uncle? From Little Cecily with her fondest love to her dear Uncle Jack. There is no objection, I admit, to an aunt being a small aunt. But why an aunt, no matter what her size may be, should call her own nephew her uncle, I can't quite make out. And besides, your name isn't Jack at all, it is Ernest.
It isn't Ernest, it's Jack.
You have always told me it was Ernest. I have introduced you to everyone as Ernest. You answer to the name of Ernest. You look as if your name was Ernest. You are the most Ernest-looking person I ever saw in my life. It is perfectly absurd if you're saying that your name isn't Ernest. It is on your cards. Here is one of them. Mr. Ernest Worthing, before the Albany. I'll keep this as proof that your name is Ernest if ever you try to deny it to me, or to Gwendolyn, or to anyone else.
Well, my name is Ernest in town, and Jack in the country. And the cigarette case was given to me in the country.
But that does not account for the fact that your small Aunt Cecily, who lives at Tunbridge Wells, calls you her dear uncle. Come, old boy, you had much better have the thing out at once.
My dear fellow, you talk exactly as if you were a dentist. Very, very vulgar to talk like a dentist when one isn't a dentist. It produces a false impression.
Well, that is exactly what dentists always do. Now go on. Tell me the whole thing. I may mention that I have always suspected you of being a confirmed and secret Bunburyist, and I'm quite sure of it now.
Bunburyist? What on earth do you mean by Bunburyist?
I'll reveal to you the meaning of that incomparable expression as soon as you're kind enough to inform me why you are Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Well, produce my cigarette case first.
Here it is. Now go on. Produce your explanation. Pray, make it improbable.
My dear fellow, there's nothing improbable about my explanation at all. In fact, it's perfectly ordinary. The late Mr. Thomas Cardew, an old gentleman, very charitable and kindly disposition, who adopted me when I was a little boy, made me in his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Miss Cardew who addresses me as her uncle from motives of respect that you could not possibly appreciate, lives in my place in the country under the charge of her admirable governess, Miss Prism.
Where is that place in the country, by the way?
That is nothing to you, dear boy. You're not going to be invited. I may tell you candidly that the place is not in Shropshire.
I suspected that, my dear fellow. I have bumburied all over Shropshire on 2 separate occasions. Now go on. Why are you Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear Algy, I don't know whether you'll be able to understand my real motives. You are hardly serious enough. When one is placed in the position of guardian, one has to adopt a very high moral tone on all subjects. It's one's duty to do so, and as a high moral tone can hardly be said to conduce very much to either one's health or one's happiness, in order to get up to town, I have always pretended to have a younger brother of the name of Ernest, who lives in the Albany and gets into the most dreadful of scrapes. That, my dear Algy, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure, never simple. Modern life would be very tedious and go either, and modern literature a complete impossibility.
That wouldn't be at all a bad thing.
Literary criticism is not your forte, my dear fellow. Don't try it. You should leave that to the people who haven't been at a university. They do it so well in the daily papers. What you really are is a bumberist. I was quite right in saying you were a bumberist. You are one of the most advanced bumberists I know.
What on earth do you mean?
You have enlisted a very useful younger brother called Ernest, so that you may be able to come up to town as often as you like. I have invented an invaluable permanent invalid called Bunbury, in order that I may be able to go down to the country whenever I choose. Bunbury, perfectly invaluable. If it wasn't for Bunbury's extraordinary bad health, for instance, I wouldn't be able to dine with you at Willis's tonight, for I've really been engaged to Aunt Augusta for more than a week.
I haven't asked you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
I know. You are absurdly careless about sending out invitations. It is very foolish of you. Nothing annoys people so much as not receiving invitations.
You had much better dine with your Aunt Augusta.
I haven't the smallest intention of doing anything of the kind. In the first place, I dined there on Monday. Once a week is quite enough to dine with one's own relations. In the second place, whenever I do dine there, I'm always treated as a member of the family and sent down with either no woman at all or 2. In the third place, I know perfectly well whom she will place me next to tonight. She will place me next Mary Barker, who always flirts with her own husband across the dinner table. That is not very pleasant. Indeed, it is not even decent. And that sort of thing is enormously on the increase. The amount of women in London who flirt with their own husbands is perfectly scandalous. It looks so bad. It is simply washing one's clean linen in public. Besides, now that I know you to be a confirmed Bunburyist, I naturally want to talk to you about Bunbury. I want to tell you the rules.
I'm not a Bunburyist. If Gwendolyn accepts me, indeed, then you're going to kill my brother. I think I'm going to kill him in any case. Cecily's a little too much interested in him. He's rather a bore. So I'm going to get rid of Ernest, and I strongly advise you to do the same with Mr. your invalid friend, who has the absurd name.
Nothing will induce me to part with Bunbury. And if you ever get married, which seems to me extremely problematic, you will be very glad to know Bunbury. A man who marries without knowing Bunbury has a very tedious time of it.
That is nonsense. If I marry a charming girl like Gwendolyn, oh, she's the only girl I ever saw in my life that I would marry, I certainly won't want to know Bunbury.
Then your wife will. You don't seem to realize that in married life, 3 is company and 2 is none.
That, my dear young friend, is the theory that the corrupt French drama has been propounding for the last 50 years.
Yes, and that the happy English home is proved at half the time.
For heaven's sake, don't try to be cynical. It's perfectly easy to be cynical.
My dear fellow, it isn't easy to be anything nowadays. There's such a lot of beastly competition about. That must be Aunt Augusta. Only relatives of predators ever ring in that Wagnerian manner. Now, if I get out of the way for 10 minutes so that you can have an opportunity for proposing to Kaetlyn, may I dine with you tonight at Willis's?
I suppose so, if you want to.
Yes, but you must be serious about it. I hate people who are not serious about meals. It is so shallow of them.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, dear Algernon. I hope you are behaving very well.
I'm feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
That's not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Dear me, you are smart.
I am always smart. Am I not, Mr. Worthing?
You're quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, I do hope I am not that. It would leave no room for developments, and I intended to develop in many directions.
I am sorry if we are a little late, Algernon. I was obliged to call on dear Lady Harbury. I hadn't been there since her poor husband's death. I never saw a woman so altered. She looks quite 20 years younger. And now I'll have one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me and a cup of tea.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta.
Won't you come and sit over here, Gwendolyn?
Thanks, Mamma. I'm quite comfortable where I am.
Good heavens! Lay, why are there no cucumber sandwiches? I ordered them special.
There were no cucumbers in the market this morning, sir. I went down twice.
No cucumbers?
No, sir. Not even for ready money.
That will do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I am greatly distressed, Aunt Augusta, about there being no cucumbers. Not even for ready money.
It really makes no matter, Algernon. I had some crumpets with Lady Harbury, who seems to me to be living entirely for pleasure now.
I hear her hair has turned quite gold from grief.
It certainly has changed its color. From what cause, I, of course, cannot say. Thank you. I've quite a treat for you tonight, Algernon. I'm going to send you down with Mary Farker. Such a nice woman and so attentive to her husband. It is delightful to watch them.
I am afraid, Aunt Augusta, I shall have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight after all.
I hope not, Algernon. It would put my table completely out. Your uncle would have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he is accustomed to that.
It is a great bore, and I need hardly say a terrible disappointment to me. But the fact is, I have just had a telegram to say that my poor friend Bunbury is very ill again. They seem to think I should be with him.
It is very strange. This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes, poor Bunbury's a dreadful invalid.
Well, I must say, Algernon, I think it is high time that Mr. Bunbury made up his mind whether he was going to live or to die. This shilly-shallying with the question is absurd. Nor do I in any way approve of the modern sympathy with invalids. I consider it morbid. Illness of any kind is hardly a thing to be encouraged in others. Health is the primary duty of life. I am always telling that to your poor uncle, but he never seems to take much notice as far as any improvement in his ailment goes. I would be much obliged if you would ask Mr. Bunbury from me to be kind enough not to have a relapse on Saturday. I rely on you to arrange my music for me. It is my last reception, and one wants something that will encourage conversation, particularly at the end of the season when everyone has practically said whatever they had to say, which in most cases was probably not much.
I'll speak to Bunbury on Augusta, if he is still conscious, and I think I can promise you he'll be all right by Saturday. Of course, the music is a great difficulty. You see, if one plays good music, people don't listen. And if one plays bad music, people don't talk. But I'll run over the program I've drawn out if you will accompany me into the next room for a moment.
Oh, thank you, Algernon. It is very thoughtful of you. I'm sure the program will be delightful. After a few expurgations. French songs I cannot possibly allow. People always seem to think they are improper and either look shocked, which is vulgar, or laugh, which is worse. But German sounds a thoroughly respectable language, and indeed I believe is so. Gwendolyn, you will accompany me.
Certainly, Mamma.
Charming day it has been, Miss Fairfax.
Pray don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I always feel quite certain that they mean something else, and that makes me so nervous.
I do mean something else,
I thought so. In fact, I am never wrong.
and I would like to be allowed to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
I would certainly advise you to do so. Mamma has a way of coming back suddenly into a room that I have often had to speak with her about.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I met you, I've admired you more than any other girl I've ever met since I met you.
Yes, I am quite well aware, in fact. And I have often wished that in public, at any rate, you had been more demonstrative. For me, you have always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. The fact is constantly being mentioned in the more expensive monthly magazines, and has even reached the provincial pulpits, I am told. And it has always been my ideal to love someone of the name of Ernest. There is something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. The moment Algernon told me he had a friend called Ernest, I knew I was destined to love you.
Do you really love me, Gwendolyn?
Passionately.
Oh, darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
Oh, my own Ernest.
But you don't really mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Ernest.
But your name is Ernest.
Oh, yes, I know it is. But supposing it was something else, do you mean to say you couldn't love me then?
Oh, that is clearly a metaphysical speculation. And like most metaphysical speculations, has very little reference at all to the actual facts of real life as we know them.
Personally, darling, to speak quite candidly, I don't much care about the name of Ernest. I don't think the name suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly. It is a divine name. It has a music of its own. It produces vibrations.
Well, really, Gwendolyn, I must say that I think there are lots of other, much nicer names. I think Jack, for instance, a charming name.
Jack! No! Oh, there's very little music, if any at all, in the name Jack. It does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibrations. I have known several Jacks, and they all, without exception, were more than usually plain. Besides, Jack is a common domesticity for the name John, and I pity any woman who is married to a man called John. She would probably never be allowed to know the entrancing pleasure of a single moment's solitude. The only really safe name is Ernest.
Gwendolyn, I must be christened at once. I mean, we must get married at once. There's no time to be lost.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Well, surely, you know that I love you, and you led me to believe, Miss Fairfax, that you were not absolutely indifferent to me.
I adore you. But you haven't proposed to me yet. Nothing at all has been said about marriage. The subject has not even been touched on.
Well, may I propose to you now?
I think it would be an admirable opportunity. And to spare you any possible disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I think it only fair to tell you quite frankly beforehand that I am fully determined to accept you.
Oh, Gwendolyn!
Yes, Mr. Worthing, what have you got to say to me?
Oh, you know what I've got to say to you?
Yes, but you don't say it!
Gwendolyn! Will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling! Oh, how long about it! Oh, I'm afraid you have not had very much experience in how to propose.
My own one, I have never loved anyone in the world but you.
Yes, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does. All my girlfriends tell me so. Oh, what wonderfully blue eyes you have, Ernest. They are quite blue. I hope you will always look at me just like that, especially when there are other people present.
Mr. Worthing! Rise, sir, from this semi-recumbent posture. It is most indecorous.
Mamma, I must beg you to retire. This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing is not quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
I'm engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Pardon me. You are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged to someone, I or your father, should his health permit him, will inform you of the fact. An engagement should come on a young girl as a surprise, pleasant or unpleasant as the case may be. It is hardly a matter that she could be allowed to decide for herself. Now, I have a few questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. While I am making these inquiries, you, Gwendolyn, will wait for me below in the carriage.
Mamma!
In the carriage, Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn! The carriage!
Yes, Mamma.
You can take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell. I prefer standing.
I feel bound to tell you that you are not down on my list of eligible young men. Although I have the same list as the dear Duchess of Bolton has, we work together, in fact. However, I am quite ready to enter your name, should your answers be what a really affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes, I must admit I smoke.
I'm glad to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many idle men in London as it is. How old are you?
29.
Very good age to be married at. I have always been of opinion that a man who desires to get married should know either everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
I am pleased to hear it. I do not approve of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate exotic fruit. Touch it and the bloom is gone. The whole theory of modern education is radically unsound. Fortunately, in England, at any rate, education produces no effect whatsoever. If it did, it would prove a serious danger to the upper classes, and probably lead to acts of violence in Grosvenor Square. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or in investments?
In investments, chiefly.
That is satisfactory. What between the duties expected of one during one's lifetime and the duties exacted from one after one's death, land has ceased to be either a profit or a pleasure. It gives one position and prevents one from keeping it up. And that's all that can be said about land.
I have a country house with some land, of course, attached to it, about 1,500 acres, I believe, but I don't depend on that for my real income. In fact, as far as I can make out, the poachers are the only people who make anything out of it.
A country house. How many bedrooms? Well, that point can be cleared up afterwards. You have a townhouse, I hope. A girl with a simple, unspoiled nature like Gwendolyn could hardly be expected to reside in the country.
Well, I own a house in Belgrave Square, but it is let by the year to Lady Bloxham. Of course, I can get it back whenever I like, at 6 months' notice.
Lady Bloxham. I don't know her.
She goes about very little. She's a lady considerably advanced in years.
Ah, nowadays that is no guarantee of respectability of character. What number in Belgrave Square?
149.
Unfashionable side. Thought there was something. However, that could easily be altered.
Do you mean the fashion or the sign?
Both, if necessary, I presume. What are your politics?
I'm afraid I really have none. I'm a liberal unionist.
Oh, they count as Tories. They dine with us or come in the evening, at any rate. Now, two minor matters. Are your parents living?
I have lost both my parents.
To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father? He was evidently a man of some wealth. Was he born in what the radical papers call the purple of commerce? Or did he rise from the ranks of the aristocracy?
I'm afraid I really don't know. The fact is, Lady Bracknell, I said that I had lost my parents. It would be near to the truth to say that my parents seem to have lost me. I don't actually know who I am by birth. I was found.
Found?
The late Mr. Thomas Cardew, an old gentleman of a very charitable, kindly disposition, found me, gave me the name of Worthing, because he happened to have a first-class ticket to Worthing in his pocket at the time. Worthing is a place in Sussex. It is a seaside resort.
Where did the charitable gentleman who had a first-class ticket to this seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, Lady Bracknell, I was in a handbag, a somewhat large, black leather handbag with handles to it. An ordinary handbag, in fact.
In what locality did this Mr. James or Thomas Cardew come across this ordinary handbag?
In the cloakroom at Victoria Station. It was given to him in mistake for his own.
The cloakroom at Victoria Station?
Yes, the Brighton line.
The line is immaterial! Mr. Worthing, I confess I feel somewhat bewildered by what you have just told me. To be born, or at any rate bred, in a handbag, whether it had handles or not, seems to me to display a contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life that remind one of the worst excesses of the French Revolution. And I presume you know what that unfortunate movement led to. As for the particular locality in which the handbag was found, a cloakroom in a railway station might serve to conceal a social indiscretion, has indeed probably been used for that purpose before now, but it can hardly be regarded as an assured basis for a recognized position in good society.
May I ask you then, what would you advise me to do? I need hardly say I would do anything in the world to ensure Gwendolyn's happiness.
I would strongly advise you, Mr. Worthing, to try and acquire some relations as soon as possible, and to make a definite effort to produce, at any rate, one parent of either sex before the season is quite over.
Well, I don't see how I would possibly manage to do that. I can produce the handbag any moment. It is in my dressing room at home. I really think that should satisfy you, Lady Bracknell.
Me, sir? What has it to do with me? You can hardly imagine that I and Lord Bracknell would dream of allowing our only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a parcel. Good morning, Mr. Worthing.
Good morning. For heaven's sake, don't play that ghastly tune, Algy. So what idiotic you are.
Didn't it go off all right, old boy? You don't mean to say that Gwendolyn refused you? I know it is a way she has. She's always refusing people. I think it is most ill-natured of her.
No, Gwendolyn is as right as a trivet. As far as she is concerned, we are engaged. Her mother is perfectly unbearable. Never met such a gorgon. I don't really know what a gorgon is like, but I'm quite sure that Lady Bracknell is one. She is a monster in any case, without being a myth, which is rather unfair. I beg your pardon, Algy. I suppose I should be talking about your own aunt in that way before you.
My dear boy, I love hearing my relations abused. It is the only thing that makes me put up with them at all. Relations are simply a tedious pack of people who haven't got the remotest knowledge of how to live, nor the smallest instinct about when to die.
That is nonsense.
It isn't.
Well, I won't argue about that. You always want to argue about things.
That is exactly what things were originally made for.
Upon my word, if I thought that, I'd shoot myself. Algy, you don't think that there's any chance of Gwendolyn becoming like her mother in about 150 years, do you?
All women become like their mothers. That is their tragedy. No man does. That's his.
Is that clever?
It is perfectly phrased and quite true as any observation in civilized life should be.
I'm such a den of cleverness. Everybody is clever nowadays. You can't go anywhere without meeting clever people. The thing has become an absolute public nuisance. I wish to goodness we'd a few fools left.
We have.
I'd extremely like to meet them. What do they talk about?
The fools owe about the clever people, of course.
What fools?
By the way, did you tell Gwendolyn the truth about your being Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear fellow, the truth isn't quite the sort of thing one tells to a nice, sweet, refined girl. What extraordinary ideas you have about the way to behave to a woman.
The only way to behave to a woman is to make love to her if she's pretty, and to someone else if she's plain.
Nonsense!
What about your brother? What about the profligate Ernest?
So, before the end of the week I shall get rid of him. I'll say he died in Paris of apoplexy. Lots of people die of apoplexy quite suddenly, don't they?
Yes, but it's hereditary, my dear fellow. It's a kind of thing that can run in families. You had much better say severe chill.
You are quite sure that a severe chill isn't hereditary or anything of that kind?
Of course it isn't.
Very well then. My poor brother Ernest is carried off suddenly in Paris by a severe chill. That gets rid of him.
But didn't you say that Miss Cardew was a little too much interested in your poor brother Ernest? Won't she feel his loss a good deal?
No, that is all right. Cecily is not a silly, romantic girl, I am glad to say. She has a capital appetite, goes long walks, and pays no attention at all to her lessons.
I would rather like to see Cecily.
I will take very good care you never do. She's excessively pretty, and she is only just 18.
Have you told Gwendolyn yet that you have an excessively pretty ward who's only just 18?
Oh, one doesn't blurt these things out to people. Cecily and Gwendolyn are perfectly certain to be extremely great friends. I'll bet you anything you like that half an hour after they have met, they'll be calling each other sister.
Women only do that when they've called each other a lot of other things first. Now, my dear boy, if we want to get a good table at Willis's, we really must go and dress. Did you know it is nearly 7?
Always is nearly 7.
Well, I'm hungry.
I never knew you when you weren't.
What shall we do after dinner? Go to a theatre?
Oh no, I loathe listening.
Well, shall we go to the club?
Oh no, I hate talking.
Well, might we trot round the Empire at 10?
Oh no, I I can't bear looking at things. It's so silly.
Well, what shall we do?
Nothing.
It is awfully hard work doing nothing. But I don't mind hard work when there's no definite object of any kind.
Miss Fairfax.
Gwendolyn, upon my word.
Algie, kindly turn round. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
Really, Gwendolyn, I don't think I can allow this at all.
Algie, you always adopt a strictly immoral attitude towards life. I don't think you're quite old enough to be doing that.
My own darling.
Ernest, we may never be married. From the expression of Mamma's face, I fear we never shall. Few parents nowadays pay any regard to what their children say to them. The old-fashioned respect for the young is fast dying out. Any influence I had over Mamma I lost at the age of 3. It may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and I may marry someone else and marry often. Nothing she can do can possibly alter my eternal devotion to you.
Oh dear, Gwendolyn.
The story of your romantic origin, as related to me by Mamma with unpleasing comments, has naturally stirred the deeper fibers of my nature. Your Christian name has an irresistible fascination. The simplicity of your character is exquisitely incomprehensible to me. Your address in town at the Albany I have. What is your address in the country?
The Manor House, Woolton, Hertfordshire.
There is a good postal service there, I suppose. It may be necessary to do something desperate. That will, of course, require serious consideration. I will communicate with you daily.
Oh, my own darling.
How long do you remain in town?
Till Monday.
Good. Algie, you may turn round now.
Thanks, I've turned round already.
You may also ring the bell.
You let me see at your carriage, my own one.
Certainly.
I will see Miss Fairfax out.
Yes, sir.
A glass of sherry, Lane.
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow, Lane, I'm going bumbering.
Yes, sir.
I shall probably not be back till Monday. You can put up my dress clothes, my smoking jacket, and all the bumbery suits.
Yes, sir.
I hope tomorrow will be a fine day, Lane.
It never is, sir.
Lane, you are the perfect pessimist.
I do my best to give satisfaction, sir.
Oh, now there's a simple, intellectual girl, the only girl I ever cared for in my whole life. What on earth are you so amused at?
Oh, I'm just a little anxious about poor Bunbury, that's all.
If you don't take care, your friend Bunbury will get you into a serious scrape someday.
I love scrapes. They're the only things that are never serious.
That is nonsense, Algie. You've never talked anything but nonsense.
Nobody ever does.
Cecily, surely such a utilitarian occupation as the watering of flowers is rather Moulton's duty than yours, especially at a moment when intellectual pleasures await you. Your German grammar is on the table. Pray open it to page 15. We will repeat yesterday's lesson.
But I don't like German. It isn't at all a becoming language. I know perfectly well I look quite plain after my German lesson.
You know how anxious your guardian is that you should improve yourself in every way. He laid particular stress on your German as he was leaving for town yesterday. Indeed, he always lays stress on your German as he's leaving for town.
Uncle Jack is so very serious. Sometimes he is so serious that I think he cannot be quite well.
Your guardian enjoys the best of health, and his gratitude demeanor is especially to be commended in one so comparatively young as he is. I know no one with a higher sense of duty and responsibility.
I suppose that's why he often looks a little bored when we three are together.
Cicely, I'm surprised at you. Mr. Worthing has many troubles in his life. Our merriment and triviality would be out of place in his conversation. You must remember his constant anxiety about that unfortunate young man, his brother.
I wish Uncle Jack would allow that unfortunate young man, his brother, to come down here sometime. We might have a good influence over him. I'm sure you certainly would, Miss Prism. You know, German and geology and things of that kind influence a man very much.
I do not think even I could produce any effect on a character that by his own brother's admission is irretrievably weak and vacillating. Indeed, I am not sure I would desire to reclaim him. I am not in favour of this modern mania for turning bad people into good people at a moment's notice. As a man sows, so let him reap. You must put away your diary, Cecily. I do not see why you should keep a diary at all.
I keep a diary in order to enter the wonderful secrets of my life. If I didn't write them down, I should probably forget all about them.
Memory, my dear Cecily, is the diary we all carry about with us.
Yes, but it usually chronicles the things that have never happened and couldn't possibly have happened. I believe memory is responsible for nearly all 3-volume novels Moody sends us.
Oh, speak slightly of the 3-volume novel, Cecily. I wrote one myself in earlier days.
Did you really, Miss Prism? How wonderfully clever you are. I hope it did not end happily. I don't like novels that end happily. They depress me so much.
The good ended happily, the bad unhappily. That is what fiction means.
I suppose so, but it seems very unfair. And was your novel ever published?
Alas, no. The manuscript, unfortunately, was abandoned. I mean the word in the sense of lost or mislaid. To your work, child, these speculations were profitless.
But I see Dr. Chasuble coming up through the garden.
Dr. Chasuble, this is indeed a pleasure.
And how are we this morning? Miss Prism, you are, I trust, well.
Miss Prism has just been complaining of a slight headache. I think it would do her so much good to take a short stroll in the park with you, Dr. Chasuble.
Cicely, I never mentioned anything about having a headache.
No, my dear Miss Prism, I know that, but I felt instinctively that you had a headache. Indeed, I was thinking about that and not about my German lesson when the rector came in.
I hope, Cecily, you are not inattentive.
Oh, I'm afraid I am.
That is strange. Were I fortunate enough to be Miss Prism's pupil, I would hang upon her lips. I spoke metaphorically. My metaphor was drawn from bees. Has Mr. Worthing returned from town yet?
We do not expect him till Monday afternoon.
Ah, yes. He usually likes to spend his Sunday in London. He is not one of those whose sole aim is enjoyment, as by all accounts that unfortunate young man his brother seems to be. But I must not disturb Egeria and her pupil any longer.
Egeria? My name is Letitia, Doctor.
A classical allusion merely, drawn from the pagan authors. I shall see you both, no doubt, at evensong.
I think, dear Doctor, I will have a stroll with you. I find I have a headache after all, and a walk might do it good.
With pleasure, Miss Prism, with pleasure. We might go as far as the schools and back.
That would be delightful. Cecily, you will read your political economy in my absence. The chapter on the fall of the rupee you may omit. It is somewhat too sensational. Even its metallic problems have their melodramatic sides.
Horrid political economy. Horrid geography. Horrid German!
luggage with him. Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany W, Uncle Jack's brother. Did you tell him Mr. Worthing was in town?
Yes, miss. He was very disappointed. I mentioned you and Miss Prism were in the garden. He said he was anxious to speak with you privately for a moment.
Ask Mr. Ernest Worthing to come out here. I suppose you better talk to the housekeeper about a room for him.
Yes, miss.
I've never met any really wicked person before. I feel rather frightened. I'm so afraid he will look just like everyone else. He does!
You must be my little cousin Cecily, I'm sure.
You are under some strange mistake. I am not little. In fact, I am more than usually tall for my age. But I am your cousin Cecily. You, I see by your card, are Uncle Jack's brother. My cousin Ernest. My wicked cousin Ernest.
I am not really wicked at all, cousin Cecily. You mustn't think that I am wicked.
Well, if you are not, then you certainly have been deceiving us all in a very inexcusable manner. I hope you have not been leading a double life, pretending to be wicked and being really good all the time. That would be hypocrisy.
Of course, I have been rather reckless.
I'm glad to hear it.
In fact, now that you mention the subject, I have been very bad in my own small way.
Oh, I don't think you should be so proud of that. Though I'm sure it must have been very nice.
Much nicer being here with you.
I can't understand how you're here at all. Uncle Jack won't be back till Monday afternoon.
That is a great disappointment. I'm obliged to go up by the first train on Monday morning. I have a business appointment that I'm anxious to miss.
Couldn't you miss it anywhere but in London?
No, the appointment is in London.
I know, of course, how important it is not to keep a business engagement if one wants to retain any sense of the beauty of life, but still, I think you better wait till Uncle Jack arrives. I know he wants to speak to you about your emigrating.
About my what?
Your emigrating. He's gone up to buy your outfit.
I certainly wouldn't let Jack buy my outfit. He has no taste in neckties at all.
Oh, I don't think you will require neckties. Uncle Jack is sending you to Australia.
Australia? I'd sooner die.
Well, he said at dinner on Wednesday night that you would have to choose between this world, the next world, and Australia.
Oh, well, the accounts I have received of Australia and the next world are not particularly encouraging. This world is good enough for me, cousin Cecily.
Yes, but are you good enough for it?
I'm afraid I'm not that. That is why I want you to reform me. You might make that your mission if you don't mind, cousin Cecily.
I'm afraid I've no time this afternoon.
Well, would you mind my reforming myself this afternoon?
It's rather quixotic of you, but I think you should try.
I will. I feel better already.
You are looking a little worse.
That is because I am hungry.
How thoughtless of me. I should have remembered that when one is going to lead an entirely new life, one requires regular and wholesome meals. Won't you come in?
Thank you. Might I have a buttonhole first? I never have any item set unless I have a buttonhole first.
Marshal Niel?
No, I'd sooner have a pink rose.
Why?
Because you are like a pink rose, cousin Cecily.
I don't think it can be right for you to talk to me like that. Miss Prism never says such things to me.
Then Miss Prism must be a short-sighted old lady. You are the prettiest girl I ever saw.
Miss Prism says that all good looks are a snare.
They are a snare that every sensible man like being popped in.
Oh, I don't think I should care to catch a sensible man. I should know what to talk to him about.
You are too much alone, dear Dr. Trotzible. You should get married. A misanthrope I can understand. A womanthrope, never.
Believe me, I do not deserve so logistic a phrase. The precept as well as the practice of the primitive church was distinctly against matrimony.
Well, that is obviously why the primitive church has not lasted up to the present day. And you do not seem to realize, dear doctor, that by persistently remaining single, a man converts himself into a permanent public temptation. Men should be more careful. This very celibacy leads weaker vessels astray.
But is a man not equally attractive when married?
No married man is ever attractive except to his wife.
And often I've been told not even to her.
That depends on the intellectual sympathies of the woman. Maturity can be depended upon. Brightness can be trusted. Young women are green. I spoke horticulturally. My metaphor was drawn from fruits. Where is Cecily?
Perhaps she followed us to the schools.
Mr. Worthing?
Mr. Worthing?
This is indeed a surprise. We did not look for you till Monday afternoon.
I returned sooner than I expected. Dr. Trotzible, I hope you are well.
Dear Mr. Worthing, I trust this garb of woe does not betoken some terrible calamity.
My brother.
Or she forgets an extravagance.
Still leading his life of pleasure.
Dead.
Your brother, Ernest, dead.
Quite dead.
What a lesson for him. I trust he will profit by it.
Mr. Worthing, I offer you my sincere condolence. You at least have the consolation of knowing that you are always the most generous and forgiving of brothers.
Oh, poor Ernest. He had many faults, but it is a sad, sad blow.
Very sad indeed. Were you with him at the end?
No, he died abroad. In Paris, in fact. I had a telegram last night from the manager of the Grand Hotel.
Was the cause of death mentioned?
A severe chill, it seems.
As a man sows, so let him reap.
Charity, dear Miss Prism, charity. None of us are perfect. I myself am peculiarly susceptible to severe drafts. Will the interment take place here?
No, he seemed expressed a desire to be buried in Paris.
In Paris? I fear that hardly points to any very serious state of mind at the last. You would no doubt wish me to make some slight allusion to this tragic domestic affliction next Sunday. My sermon on the meaning of the manna in the wilderness can be adapted to any occasion, joyful, or as in the present case, distressing. I have preached it at harvest celebrations, christenings, confirmations, days of humiliations, and festal days. The last time I delivered it was in the cathedral as a charity sermon on behalf of the Society for the Prevention of Discontent among the upper orders. The bishop was there, and he was much struck by some of the analogies that I drew.
You mentioned christenings, I think, Dr. Trotzible. I suppose you know how to christen, all right? I mean, of course, you are continually christening, aren't you?
It is, I regret to say, one of the rector's most constant duties in this parish. I've often spoken to the poorer classes on the subject. They don't seem to know what thrift is.
But is there a particular infant in whom you are interested, Mr. Worthing? Your brother was, I believe, unmarried, was he not?
Oh, yes.
People who live entirely for pleasure usually are.
But it is not for a child, dear doctor. No, I'm very fond of children. The fact is, I would like to be christened myself this afternoon. You've nothing better to do.
But surely, Mr. Worthing, you have been christened already.
I don't remember anything about it.
But have you any grave doubts on the subject?
I certainly intend to have. Of course, I don't know if it would bother you in any way, or if you think I'm a little too old now.
Not at all. The sprinkling and indeed the immersion of adults is a perfectly canonical practice.
Immersion.
Oh, you need have no apprehensions. Sprinkling is all that is necessary, or indeed I think advisable. Our weather is so changeable. At what hour do you wish the ceremony performed?
So, I might trot about at 5, if that would suit you.
Perfectly, perfectly. In fact, I have 2 similar ceremonies to perform at that time. A case of twins that occurred recently in one of the outlying cottages on your own estate. Poor Jenkins the carter, a most hard-working man.
Oh, I don't see much fun in being christened along with other babies. It would be childish. Would 5:30 do?
Admirably, admirably. But, dear Mr. Worthing, I will not intrude into a house of sorrow any longer. I merely beg you not to be too much bowed down by grief. What seem to us bitter trials are most often blessings in disguise.
This seems to me a blessing of an extremely obvious kind.
Uncle Jack! Oh, I'm pleased to see you back, but what horrid clothes you've got on. Do go and change now.
Cecily, my child, my child.
What is the matter, Uncle Jack? Do you look happy? You look as if you got a toothache. And I've got such a surprise for you. Who do you think is in the dining room? Your brother!
Who?
Your brother Ernest. He arrived half an hour ago.
What nonsense. I haven't got a brother.
Oh, don't say that. However badly he may have behaved to you in the past, he is still your brother. You couldn't be so heartless as to disown him now. I'll tell him to come out, and you will shake hands with him, won't you, Uncle Jack?
These are very joyful tidings.
After we had all been resigned to his loss, his sudden return seems to be peculiarly distressing.
My brother's in the dining room. I don't know what it all means. I think it is perfectly absurd. Good heavens!
Brother Jordan, I have come down from town to tell you that I'm very sorry for all the trouble I have given you, and that I intend to lead a better life in the future.
Uncle Jack, you are not going to refuse your own brother's hand.
Nothing will induce me to take his hand. I think his coming down here disgraceful. He knows perfectly well why.
Uncle Jack, do be nice. There is some good in everyone. Ernest has just been telling me about his poor invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury, who goes to him so often. And surely there must be much good in one who is kind to an invalid and leaves the pleasures of London to sit by a bed of pain.
Oh, he has been talking about Bunbury, has he?
Oh, yes. He's told me all about poor Mr. Bunbury and his terrible state of health.
Bunbury? Well, I won't have him talk to you about Bunbury or about anything else. It's enough to drive one perfectly frantic.
Of course, I admit the faults were all on my side, but Brother John's coldness to me is peculiarly painful. I expected a more enthusiastic welcome, especially considering it is the first time I've come here.
Uncle Jack, if you do not shake hands with Ernest, I will never forgive you.
Never forgive me.
Never, never, never.
Well, this is the last time I shall ever do it.
It is pleasant, is it not, to see so perfect a reconciliation? I think we might leave the 2 brothers together.
Cecily, you will come with us. Certainly, Miss Prism. My little task of reconciliation is done.
You have done a beautiful action today, dear child.
We must not be premature in our judgments.
I feel very happy.
You young scoundrel, Algy, you must get out of this place as soon as possible. I don't allow any Bunbury here.
I put Mr. Ernest things in the room next to yours, sir.
What?
Mr. Ernest's luggage, sir. I unpacked it and put it in the room next to your own.
His luggage?
Yes, sir. 3 portmanteaus, a dressing case, 2 hot boxes, and a large luncheon basket.
I am afraid I can't stay more than a week this time.
Merriman, order the dog cart at once. Mr. Ernest has suddenly been called back to town.
Yes, sir.
What a fearful liar you are, Jack. I have not been called back to town at all.
Yes, you have.
I haven't heard anyone call me.
Your duty as a gentleman calls you back.
My duty as a gentleman has never interfered with my pleasures in the smallest degree.
I can quite understand that.
Well, Cecily is a darling.
You are not to speak of Miss Cardew like that. I don't like it.
Well, I don't like your clothes. You look perfectly ridiculous in them. Why on earth don't you go up and change? It is perfectly childish to be in deep mourning for a man who is actually staying for a whole week with you in your house as a guest. I call it grotesque.
You're certainly not staying with me for a whole week as a guest or anything else. You've got to leave by the 4:05 train.
I certainly won't leave you so long as you're in mourning. It would be most unfriendly. If I were in mourning, you would stay with me. I suppose I should think it very unkind if you didn't.
Well, will you go if I change my clothes?
Yes, if you're not too long. I never saw anybody take so long to dress and with such little result.
Well, it's better than being always overdressed as you are.
If I am occasionally a little overdressed, I make up for it by being always immensely overeducated.
Your vanity is ridiculous. Your conduct an outrage. And your presence in my garden utterly absurd. However, you've got to catch the 4:05, and I hope you have a pleasant journey back to town. This bud breeding, as you call it, has not been a great success for you.
I think it's been a great success. I am in love with Cecily, and that is everything. But I must see her before I go and make arrangements for another Bunbury. Ah, there she is.
Oh, I merely came back to water the roses. I thought you were with Uncle Jack.
He's gone to order the dog carts for me.
Oh, is he going to take you for a nice drive?
He's going to send me away.
Then we've got to part.
I am afraid so. It is a very painful parting.
It is always very painful to part from people whom one has known a very brief space of time. The absence of old friends one can endow with equanimity, but even a momentary separation from anyone to whom one has just been introduced is almost unbearable.
Thank you.
The dog cart's at the door, sir.
It can wait, Merriman. For 5 minutes.
Yes, miss.
I hope, Cecily, I shall not offend you if I state quite frankly and openly that you seem to me to be in every way the visible personification of absolute perfection.
I think your frankness does you great credit, Ernest. If you will allow me, I will copy your remarks into my diary.
Do you really keep a diary? I'd give anything to look at it. May I?
Oh, no. You see, it is simply a very young girl's record of her own thoughts and impressions, and consequently meant for publication. When it appears in volume form, I hope you will order a copy, but pray, Ernest, don't stop. I delight in taking down from dictation. I have reached absolute perfection. You may go on. I'm quite ready for more. Don't cough, Ernest. When one is dictating, one should speak fluently and not cough. Besides, I don't know how to spell a cough.
Cecily, ever since I first looked upon your wonderful and incomparable beauty, I have dared to love you wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
I don't don't think you should say that you love me wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't seem to make much sense, does it?
Cecily,
The dog cart is waiting, sir.
tell him to come round next week at the same hour.
Yes, sir.
Uncle Jack would be very much annoyed if he knew you were staying on till next week at the same hour.
Oh, I don't care about Jack. I don't care for anybody in the whole world but you. I love you, Cecily. You will marry me, won't you?
You silly boy! Of course! Why, we've been engaged for the last 3 months.
For the last 3 months.
Yes, it'll be exactly 3 months on Thursday.
But how did we become engaged?
Well, ever since dear Uncle Jack confessed to us that he had a younger brother who was very wicked and bad, you, of course, formed the chief topic of conversation between myself and Miss Prism, and any man who is much talked about is always very attractive. One feels there must be something in him after all. I dare say it was foolish of me, but I fell in love with you, Ernest.
Darling, and when was the engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of February last, worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, I determined to end the matter one way or the other. And so, after a long struggle with myself, I accepted you underneath this dear old tree. The next day, I bought this little ring in your name, and this little bangle with true lover's knot that I promised you always to wear.
Did I get you this? It is very pretty, isn't it?
Yes, you've wonderfully good taste, Ernest. The excuse I've always given for your leading such a bad life. And this is the box in which I keep all your dear letters.
My letters. But, my own sweet Cecily, I have never written you any letters.
You need hardly remind me of that, Ernest. I remember only too well how I was forced to write your letters for you. I wrote 3 times a week, and sometimes oftener.
Oh, do let me read them, Cecily.
Oh, no! I couldn't possibly. They would make you far too conceited. The 3 you wrote me after I broke off our engagement were so beautiful, so badly spelled that even now I can hardly read them without crying a little.
But was our engagement ever broken off?
Of course it was. On the 22nd of March. You can read the diary entry if you'd like. Today I broke off my engagement with Ernest. I feel it is better to do so. The weather still continues charming.
Why on earth did you break it off? What did I do? I've done nothing at all. Cecily, I'm very much hurt indeed to hear that you broke it off, particularly when the weather was so charming.
Well, it would have been a hardly serious engagement if it hadn't been broken off at least once. But I forgave you before the week was out.
What a perfect angel you are, Cecily.
Dear romantic boy. I hope your hair curls naturally, does it?
Yes, darling, with a little help from others.
I'm so glad.
Cecily, you'll never break off our engagement again.
I don't think I could now that I've actually met you. Besides, of course, there is the question of your name.
Of course.
You must not laugh at me, darling, but it has always been a girlish dream of mine to love someone whose name was Ernest. There is something in the name that seems to inspire absolute confidence. I pity any poor married woman whose husband is not called Ernest.
But, my dear child, you don't mean to say that you could not love me if I had some other name?
But what name?
Oh, any name you like. Algernon, for instance.
But I don't like the name Algernon.
Well, my own dear, sweet, loving little darling, I really can't see why you should object to the name of Algernon. It is not at all a bad name. In fact, it is a rather aristocratic name. Half the chaps who get into the bankruptcy courts are called Algernon. But, seriously, Cecily, if my name was Algie, could you love me?
I might respect you, Ernest. I might admire your character, but I fear I should not be able to give you my undivided attention.
Cecily, your rector here is, I suppose, thoroughly experienced in the practice of all the rites and ceremonials of the church?
Oh, yes. Dr. Chasuble is a most learned man. He's never written a single book, so you can imagine how much he knows.
I must see him at once on a most important christening. I mean, on most important business.
Oh?
I shan't be away more than half an hour.
Well, considering that we've been engaged since the 14th of February and that I've only met you today for the first time, I think it is rather hard that you should leave me for so long a period as half an hour. Couldn't you make it 20 minutes?
I'll be back in no time.
What an impetuous boy he is. I like his hair so much. I must enter his proposal into my diary.
Miss Fairfax has just called to see Mr. Worthing on very important business, Miss Fairfax states.
Isn't Mr. Worthing in his library?
Mr. Worthing went in the direction of the rectory some time ago.
Pray, ask the lady to come out here. Mr. Worthing is sure to be back soon. And you can bring tea.
Yes, miss.
Miss Fairfax. I suppose one of the many good elderly women associated with Uncle Jack in some of his philanthropic work in London. I don't quite like women who are interested in philanthropic work. I think it is very forward of them.
Miss Fairfax?
Pray, let me introduce myself. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew. What a lovely name. I have a feeling we're going to be great friends. I like you already more than I can say. My first impressions of people are never wrong.
Nice of you to like me so much after we've known each other such a comparatively short time.
I may call you Cecily, may I not?
With pleasure.
And you will always call me Gwendolyn, won't you?
If you wish.
Then that is all quite settled, is it not?
I hope so.
Perhaps this might be a favourable opportunity for my mentioning who I am. My father is Lord Bracknell. You have never heard of Papa, I suppose.
I don't think so.
Outside the family circle, Papa, I'm glad to say, is entirely unknown. I think that is quite as it should be. The home seems to me to be the proper sphere for the man, and indeed, when a man begins to neglect his domestic duties, he becomes painfully effeminate, does he not? And I don't like that. It makes men so very attractive. Cecily, Mamma, whose views on education are remarkably strict, has brought me up to be extremely short-sighted. It is part of her system. So do you mind my looking at you through my glasses?
Not at all, Gwendolyn. I'm very fond of being looked at.
You are here on a short visit, I suppose.
Oh, no, I live here.
Really? Your mother, no doubt, or some other female relative of advanced years reside here also?
No, I have no mother, nor, in fact, any relations.
Indeed.
My dear guardian, along with the assistance of Miss Prism, have the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
I am Mr. Worthing's ward.
Oh. It is strange. He never mentioned to me he had a ward. How very secretive of him. He grows more interesting hourly. I cannot say, however, that the news inspires me with feelings of unmixed delight. Cecily, I'm very fond of you. I have applied to you ever since I met you, but I feel bound to state that now that I know that you are Mr. Worthing's ward, I cannot help expressing a wish that you were, well, just a little older than you appear to be, and not quite so very alluring in appearance. In fact, if I might speak candidly.
Pray do. I think whenever one has anything unpleasant to say, one should always be quite candid.
Well, to speak with perfect candor, Cecily, I wish that you were fully 42 and more than usually plain for your age. Ernest has a strong, upright nature. He is the very soul of truth and honor. Disloyalty would be as impossible for him as deception, but even men of the noblest possible moral character, extremely susceptible to the influence of the physical charms of others. Modern, no less than ancient history supplies us with many most painful examples of what I refer to. Indeed, if it were not so, history would be quite unreadable.
I beg your pardon, Gwendolyn. Did you say Ernest?
Yes.
Well, it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is my guardian. It is his brother, his elder brother.
Ernest never mentioned to me he had a brother.
I'm sorry to say that they have not been on good terms for a long time.
That explains it. And now that I think of it, I have never heard any man mention his brother. The subject seems distasteful to most men. Cecily, you have lifted a load from my mind. I was growing almost anxious. It would have been terrible if any cloud had come across a friendship like ours, would it not? Of course, you are quite sure that it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is your guardian?
Quite sure. In fact, I am going to be his.
I beg your pardon.
My dearest Gwendolyn, there is no reason why I should make a secret of it to you. Our little county newspaper is sure to chronicle the fact next week. Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
Cecily, I feel there must be some slight error. Mr. Ernest Worthing is engaged to me. The announcement will appear in the Morning Post on Saturday at the latest.
I'm afraid you must be under some misconception. Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
It is certainly very curious, for he asked me to be his wife yesterday afternoon at 5:30. If you would care to verify the incident, pray do so. Oh, clumsy. I never travel anywhere without my diary. One must always have something sensational to read on a train. I'm so sorry, dear Cecily, if it is any disappointment to you, but I am afraid that I have the prior claim.
It would distress me more than I could tell you, dear Gwendolyn, if it would cause you any mental or physical anguish, but I feel bound to point out that since Ernest has proposed to you, he clearly has changed his mind.
If the poor fellow has become entrapped into any foolish promise, I shall consider it my duty to rescue him at once, and with a firm hand.
Whatever unfortunate entanglement my dear boy may have got himself into, I will never reproach him with it after we are married.
Do you refer to me, Miss Cardew, as an entanglement? You are presumptuous. On an occasion of this kind, it becomes more than a moral duty to speak one's mind. It becomes a pleasure.
Do you suggest, Miss Fairfax, that I entrapped Ernest into an engagement? How dare you? This is no time for wearing the shallow mask of manners. When I see a spade, I call it a spade.
I am glad to say I've never seen a spade. It is obvious our social spheres have been widely different.
Shall I leave the tea here as usual, miss? yes, a great many. From the top of one of the hills quite close, one can see 5 counties.
5 counties? I shouldn't like that. I hate crowds.
I suppose that's why you live in town.
Quite a well-kept garden this is, Miss Cardew.
So glad you like it, Miss Fairfax.
I had no idea there were any flowers in the country.
Flowers are as common here, Miss Fairfax, as people are in London.
Personally, I cannot see how anybody manages to exist in the country if anybody who's anybody does. The country always bores me to death.
Ah, this is what the newspapers call agricultural depression, is it not? I believe the aristocracy are suffering very much from it at the present. It is almost an epidemic among them, or so I've been told. May I offer you some tea, Miss Fairfax?
Thank you. Detestable girl, but I require tea.
Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar is not fashionable any longer.
Cake or bread and butter?
Bread and butter, please. Cake is rarely seen at the best houses nowadays.
Hand that to Miss Fairfax.
You have filled my tea with lumps of sugar, and though I most distinctly asked for bread and butter, you have given me cake! I am known for the gentleness of my disposition, and the extraordinary sweetness of my nature. But I warn you, Miss Cardew, you may go too far.
To save my poor innocent trusting boy from the machinations of any other girl, there are no lengths to which I would not go.
From the moment I saw you, I distrusted you. I felt you were false and deceitful. I am never deceived in such matters. My first impressions of people are invariably right.
Well, it seems to me, Miss Fairfax, that I am trespassing on your valuable time. No doubt you have many other character calls of a similar nature to make in the neighborhood.
Ernest! Oh, my own Ernest!
Dear Gwendolyn.
Oh, a moment. Are you engaged to this young lady?
You dear little Cecily. Of course not. Who could have put such an idea to your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I knew there must be some misunderstanding, Miss Fairfax. The gentleman whose arm is present round your waist is my guardian, Mr. John Worthing.
I beg your pardon.
This is Uncle Jack.
Jack!
Oh! Here is Ernest.
My own love.
A moment, Ernest. May I ask you, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
To what young lady? Good heavens, Gwendolyn.
Yes, good heavens, Gwendolyn. I mean to Gwendolyn.
Of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I felt there must be some slight error, Miss Cardew. The gentleman who is now embracing you is my cousin, Mr. Mr. Algernon Moncrief.
Algernon Moncrief? Oh! Are you called Algernon?
I cannot deny it.
Oh!
Is your name really John?
I could deny it if I liked. I could deny anything if I liked. But certainly, my name is John. It has been John for years.
A gross deception has been practiced on the both of us.
My poor wounded Cecily.
My sweet, wronged Gwendolyn.
You will call me sister, won't you?
There is just one question I would like to be allowed to ask my guardian.
An excellent idea. Mr. Worthing, there is just one question I would like to be permitted to put to you. Where is your brother Ernest? We are both engaged to be married to your brother Ernest, so it is a matter of some importance to us to know where your brother Ernest is at present.
Gwendolyn, oh, Cecily, it's very painful for me to be forced to speak the truth. It's the first time in my life that I've ever been reduced to such a painful position. I'm really quite inexperienced in doing anything of the kind. But I will tell you, quite frankly, that I have no brother Ernest. I have no brother at all. I never had a brother, and I certainly have not the smallest intention of ever having one in the future.
No brother at all?
None.
Had you never a brother of any kind?
Never. Not even of any kind.
I am afraid that neither of us is engaged to be married to anyone.
It is not a very pleasant position for a young girl to find herself in, is it?
Let us go into the house. They will hardly venture to come after us there.
No. Men are so cowardly, aren't they?
This ghastly state of things is what you call bun-breeding, I suppose.
Yes. What a perfectly wonderful bunbury it is. The most wonderful bunbury I have ever had in my life.
Well, you've no right whatsoever to bun-bury here.
Oh, that is absurd. One has a right to bunbury anywhere one chooses. Every serious bunburyist knows that.
Serious bun-buryist? Good heavens!
Well, one must be serious about something if one wants to have any amusement in life. I happen to be serious about bunburying. What on earth you were serious about, I haven't got the remotest idea. About everything, I should fancy. You have such an absolutely trivial nature.
Well, the only small satisfaction I have in the whole of this wretched business is that your friend Bunbury is quite exploded. You'll be able to run down to the country quite so often as you used to, dear Algie. A very good thing, too.
Your brother is a little off color, isn't he, dear Jack? You won't be able to disappear into London quite so frequently as your wicked custom was. And not a bad thing either.
Then I must say, as for your conduct toward Miss Cardew, your taking in a sweet, simple, innocent girl like that is quite inexcusable, to say nothing of the fact that she was my ward.
Well, I can see no possible defense at all for your deceiving a brilliant, clever, thoroughly experienced young lady like Miss Fairfax, to say nothing of the fact that she is my cousin.
Though I wanted to be engaged to Gwendolyn, that is all. I love her.
Well, I simply wanted to be engaged to Cecily. I adore her.
There's certainly no chance of your marrying Miss Cardew.
I don't think there is much likelihood, Jack, of you and Miss Fairfax being united.
Well, that is no business of yours.
It was my business. I would talk about it. It is very vulgar to talk about one's business. Only people like stockbrokers do that. Then merely at dinner parties.
How can you sit there, calmly eating muffins, when we are in this horrible trouble? I can't make out. You seem to me to be perfectly heartless.
I can't not eat muffins in an agitated manner. The butter would probably get on my cuffs. One must always eat muffins quite calmly. It is the only way to eat them.
Well, I say it's perfectly heartless you're eating muffins at all, under the circumstances.
When I'm in trouble, eating is the only thing that consoles me. Indeed, when I'm in really great trouble, as anyone who knows me intimately will tell you, I refuse everything except food and drink. At the present moment, I'm eating muffins because I'm unhappy. Besides, I am particularly fond of muffins.
Well, there's no reason why I should eat them all that greedy way.
I wish you'd have tea cake instead. I don't like tea cake.
Good heavens. I suppose a man may eat his own muffins in his own garden.
But you just said it was perfectly heartless to eat muffins.
I said it was perfectly heartless of you. Under the circumstances. That is very different thing.
Well, that may be, but the muffins are the same.
Elsie, I wish to goodness you would go.
You can't possibly ask me to go without having some dinner first. It's absurd. I never go anywhere without my dinner. Nobody does, except vegetarians and people like that. Besides, I have just made arrangements for Dr. Chasuble to be christened under the name of Ernest and a cornfield slip.
My dear fellow, the sooner you give up that nonsense, the better. I made arrangements myself for Dr. Chasuble to be christened at 5:30, and I naturally would take the name of Ernest. Gwendolyn would wish it. We can't both be christened Ernest. It's absurd. Besides, I have a perfect right to be christened if I like. There's no evidence at all that I've ever been christened by anybody. I actually think it extremely probable that I never was, and so does Dr. Chasuble. It is entirely different in your case. You have been christened already.
Yes, but I've not been christened for years.
Yes, but you have been christened. That is the important thing.
Quite so. So I know my constitution can stand it. If you are not quite so sure about your ever having been christened, I think it is rather dangerous of you venturing on it now. It might make you quite unwell. You can hardly have forgotten that someone very closely connected to you was very nearly carried off this week in Paris by a severe chill.
Yes, but you yourself said that severe chills are hereditary.
It used to be unknown, but I dare say it is now. Science is always making wonderful improvements.
That is nonsense. You never took anything but nonsense.
Chip, you are at the muffins again. I wish you wouldn't. There are only 2 left. And I told you I was particularly fond of muffins.
But I hate tea cake.
Why on earth, then, do you serve tea cake up for your guests? What ideas you have of hospitality?
Algernon, I have already told you to go. I don't want you here. Why don't you go?
I haven't quite finished my tea yet. And there is still 1 muffin left.
Mr. Moncrief, kindly answer me the following question. Why did you pretend to be my guardian's brother?
So I might have the opportunity of meeting you.
That certainly seems like a satisfactory explanation, does it not?
Yes, dear, if you can believe him.
I don't. But that does not change the wonderful beauty of his answer.
True, in matters of grave importance, style, not sincerity, is the vital thing. Mr. Worthing, what possible explanation can you provide for as pretending to have a brother? Was it in order that you might come up to town to see me as often as possible?
Can you doubt it, Miss Fairfax?
I have the gravest doubts on the subject. But I intend to crush them. Now is not the time for German skepticism. Their explanations appear to be most satisfactory, especially Mr. Worthing's. That appears to have the stamp of truth on it.
I am more than content with what Mr. Moncrief has had to say. His voice alone inspires one with absolute credulity.
Then you think we should forgive them?
Yes. I mean, no.
True. I had forgot. There are principles at stake that one cannot surrender. Which of us should tell him? The task is not a pleasant one.
Could we not both speak at the same time?
An excellent idea. I nearly always speak at the same time as other people. Will you take the time with me?
Certainly. Your Christian names are still an insuperable barrier. That is all.
Is that all? But we're going to be christened this afternoon.
For me, you are willing to do this dreadful thing.
I am.
Oh, to please me, you are ready to face this fearful ordeal.
I am. How absurd to talk of the equality of the sexes, where matters of self-sacrifice are concerned. Men are infinitely beyond us.
We are.
They have moments of physical courage which we women know absolutely nothing.
Darling!
Lady Bracknell!
Gwendolyn! What does this mean?
Merely that I am engaged to be married to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Come here. Sit down. Sit down immediately. Hesitation of any kind is a sign of mental decay in the young, of physical weakness in the old. Apprised, sir, of my daughter's sudden flight by her trusty maid, whose confidence I purchased by means of a small coin, I followed her at once by a luggage train. Her unhappy father is, I am glad to say, under the impression that she is attending a more than usually lengthy lecture by the University Extension Scheme on the influence of a permanent income on thought. I do not propose to undeceive him. Indeed, I have never undeceived him on any question. I would consider it wrong. But you will clearly understand that all communication between my daughter and yourself must cease immediately from this moment. On this point, as indeed on all points, I am firm.
I am engaged to be married to Kaetlyn, Lady Bracknell.
You are nothing of the kind, sir. And now, as regards Algernon. Algernon!
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
May I ask if it is in this house that your invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury, resides?
Oh, no. Bunbury does not live here. Bunbury is somewhere else at present. In fact, Bunbury is dead.
Dead? When did he die? His death must have been extremely sudden.
Oh, I killed Bunbury this afternoon. I mean, poor Bunbury died this afternoon.
What did he die of?
Oh, he was quite exploded.
Exploded! Was he the victim of a revolutionary outrage? I was was not aware that Mr. Bunbury was interested in social legislation. If so, he is well punished for his morbidity.
Aunt Augusta, I mean, he was found out. The doctors found out that he could not live, so Bunbury died. That is what I mean.
He seems to have had great confidence in the opinion of his physician. I am glad, however, that he made up his mind at the last to some definite course of action and acted under proper medical advice. And now that we have finally got rid of this Mr. Bunbury, may I ask, Mr. Worthing, who is that young person whose hand my nephew is now holding in what seems to me a peculiarly unnecessary manner?
That lady is Miss Cecily Cardew, my ward.
I'm engaged to be married to Cecily, Aunt Augusta.
I beg your pardon.
Mr. Moultrie and I are engaged to be married, Lady Bracknell.
Do not know whether there is anything peculiarly exciting in the air of this particular part of life. The number of engagements that go on seems to me considerably above the proper average that statistics have laid down for our guidance. I think some preliminary inquiry on my part would not be out of place. Mr. Worthing, is Miss Cardew at all connected with any of the larger railway stations in London? I merely desire information. Until yesterday, I had no idea there were any families or persons whose origin was a terminus.
Miss Cardew is the granddaughter of Mr. Thomas Cardew of 149 Belgrave Square, SW, Gervais Park, Dorking, Surrey, and the Fifeshire, Sporran, NB.
That sounds not unsatisfactory. 3 addresses always inspire confidence, even in tradesmen. But what proof have I of their authenticity?
I have carefully preserved the court guides of the period, Lady Bracknell. They're open to your inspection.
I have known strange errors in that publication.
Miss Cardew's family solicitors are Messrs. Markby, and Markby.
Markby, and Markby. A firm at the very highest position in their profession. Indeed, I am told that one of the Mr. Markbys is occasionally to be seen at dinner parties. So far, I am satisfied.
They're extremely kind of you, Lady Bracknell. I have also in my possession, you'll be pleased to hear, certificates of Miss Cardew's birth, baptism, whooping cough, registration, vaccination, confirmation, and the measles. Both the German and the English variety.
Ah, a life crowded with incident, I see. Though perhaps somewhat too exciting for a young girl. I am not myself in favour of premature experiences. Kaetlyn, the time approaches for our departure. We have not a moment to lose. As a matter of form, Mr. Worthing, I had better ask if Miss Cardew has any little fortune.
Oh, about £130,000 in the funds. That is all. Goodbye, Lady Bracknell. So pleased to have seen you.
A moment, Mr. Worthing. £130,000, and in the funds. Miss Cardew seems a most attractive young lady. I really look at her. Few girls of the present day have any really solid qualities. Any of the qualities that last and improve with time. We live, I regret to say, in an age of surfaces. Come over here, dear. Pretty child. Your dress is sadly simple, and your hair seems almost as nature might have left it. But we can soon alter all that. A thoroughly experienced French maid produces a really marvellous result in a very brief space of time. I remember recommending one to young Lady Lancing, and after 3 months, her own husband did not know her.
After 6 months, nobody knew her.
Kindly turn round, dear child. Oh, no. The side view is what I want. Yes, quite as I expected. There are distinct social possibilities in your profile. The two weak points of our age are its want of principle and its want of profile. The chin a little higher, dear. Style largely depends on the way the chin is worn. They're worn very high just at present. Algernon,
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
there are distinct social possibilities in Miss Cardew's profile.
Cecily is the dearest, sweetest, prettiest girl in the whole world, and I don't care two pence about social possibilities.
Never speak disrespectfully of society, Algernon. Only people who can't get into it do that. Dear child, of course you know Algernon has nothing but his debts to depend upon. But I do not approve of mercenary marriages. When I married Lord Bracknell, I had no fortune of any kind. But I never dreamed for a moment of allowing that to stand in my way. Well, I suppose I must give my consent.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Cecily, you may kiss me.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell.
You may also address me as Aunt Augusta for the future.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
The marriage, I think, had better take place quite soon.
Oh, thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
To speak frankly, I am not in favor of long engagements. They give people the opportunity of finding out each other's character before marriage, which I think is never advisable.
I beg your pardon for interrupting you, Lady Bracknell, but I must inform you that this engagement is quite out of the question. I am Miss Cardew's guardian, and she cannot marry without my consent until she comes of age. That consent I absolutely decline to give.
Upon what grounds, may I ask? Algernon is an extremely, I may almost say ostentatiously eligible young man. He has nothing, but he looks everything. What more can one desire?
I fear that I'm very scared to talk to you about your nephew, Lady Bracknell, but the fact is, I do not approve at all of his moral character. I suspect him of being untruthful.
Untruthful? My nephew Algernon? Impossible! He is an Oxford man.
I fear there can be no possible doubt about the matter. This afternoon, during my temporary absence in London, on an important question of romance, he obtained admission to my house by means of the false pretense of being my brother. Under an assumed name, he drank, I've just been informed by my butler, an entire pint bottle of my Perrier Jouet Brut 89, wine which I was specially reserving for myself. Continuing his disgraceful deception, he succeeded in the course of the afternoon in alienating the affections of my only ward. He subsequently staged a tea and devoured every single muffin. What makes his conduct all the more heartless is that he was perfectly well aware from the first that I have no brother, that I never had a brother, that I don't intend to have a brother, not even of any kind. I distinctly told him so myself yesterday afternoon.
Mr. Worthing, after careful consideration, I have decided entirely to overlook my nephew's conduct to you.
How extremely generous of you, Lady Bracknell. My own decision, however, is unalterable. I decline to give my consent.
Come here, sweet child. How old are you, dear?
Well, I'm really only 18, but I always admit to 20 at evening parties.
You are perfectly right in making some slight alteration. Indeed, no woman should ever be quite accurate about her age. It looks so calculating. 18, but admitting to 20 at evening parties. Well, it will not be very long until you are of age and free from the restraints of tutelage. So I don't think your guardian's consent is, after all, a matter of any importance.
Pray excuse me, Lady Bracknell, for interrupting you again, but it is only fair to tell you that according to the terms of her grandfather's will, Miss Cardew does not come legally of age till she is 35.
That does not seem to me to be a grave objection. 35 is a very attractive age. London society is full of women who have, of their own free choice, remained 35 for years. Lady Dumbledore is an instance in point. To my own knowledge, she has been 35 ever since she arrived at the age of 40, which was many years ago now. I see no reason why our dear Cecily shall not be still more attractive at the age you mentioned than she is at present. There will be a large accumulation of property.
Algie, could you wait for me till I was 35?
Of course I could, Cecily, you know I could.
Yes, I felt it instinctively, but I couldn't wait all that time. I hate waiting even 5 minutes for anyone. It always makes me rather cross. I'm not punctual myself, I know, but I do like punctuality in others, and waiting, even to be married, is quite out of the question.
Well, what is to be done, Cecily?
I don't know, Mr. Moncrief.
My dear Mr. Worthing, as Miss Cardew states positively that she cannot wait until the age of 35, a remark which I am bound to say seems to show a somewhat impatient nature. I would beg of you to reconsider your decision.
But my dear Lady Bracknell, the matter's entirely in your own hands. The moment you consent to my marriage with Gwendolen, I will most gladly allow your nephew to form an alliance with my ward.
You must be quite aware that what you ask is out of the question.
Then a passionate celibacy is all that any of us can look forward to.
That is not the destiny I propose for Gwendolen. Algernon, of course, can choose for himself. Calm down. We have already missed 5, if not 6 trains. To miss any more might expose us to comment on the platform.
Everything is quite ready for the christenings.
The christening, sir. Is not that somewhat premature?
Both these gentlemen have expressed a desire for immediate baptism.
At their age? The idea is grotesque and irreligious. Algernon, I forbid you to be baptized. I will not hear of such excesses. Lord Bracknell would be highly displeased if he learned that that was the way in which you wasted your time and money.
Am I to understand that there will be no christenings at all this afternoon, then?
I don't think that, as things are now, it would be of much practical value to either of us, Dr. Chorley.
I am grieved to hear such sentiments from you, Mr. Worthing. They savour of the heretical views of the Anabaptists, views which I have completely refuted in 4 of my unpublished sermons. However, as your present mood seems to be one peculiarly secular, I will return to the church at once. Indeed, I just have been informed by the Piepmeier that for the last hour and a half, Miss Prism has been waiting for me in the vestry.
Miss Prism? Did I hear you mention a Miss Prism?
Yes, Lady Bracknell, I am on my way to join.
Pray, allow me to detain you for a moment. This matter may prove to be of vital importance to Lord Bracknell and myself. Is this Miss Prism a female of repellent aspect, remotely connected with education?
She is the most cultivated of ladies and the very picture of respectability.
It is obviously the same person. May I ask what position she holds in your household?
I am a celibate, madam.
Miss Prism, Lady Bracknell, has been for the last 3 years Miss Cardew's esteemed governess and valued companion.
In spite of what I hear of her, I must see her at once. Pray, let her be sent for.
She approaches. She is nigh.
I was told you expected me in the vestry, dear Canon. I've been waiting for you there for 1 hour and 3/4.
Prism! Come here, Prism! Prism? Where is that baby? 20 28 years ago, Prism, you left Lord Bracknell's house, number 104, Upper Grosvenor Street, in charge of a perambulator that contained a baby of the male sex. You never returned. A few weeks later, through the elaborate investigations of the Metropolitan Police, the perambulator was discovered at midnight, standing by itself in a remote corner of Bayswater. It contained the manuscript of a 3-volume novel of more than usually revolting sentiment. But the baby was not there. Prism, where is that baby?
Lady Bracknell, I admit with shame that I do not know. I only wish I did. The plain facts of the case are these. On the morning of the day you mentioned, the day that is forever branded on my memory, I prepared as usual to take the baby out in its perambulator. I had also with me a somewhat old but capacious handbag, in which I intended to place the manuscript of a work of fiction I had written during my few unoccupied hours. In a moment of mental abstraction, for which I can never forgive myself, I deposited the manuscript in the bassinet and placed the baby in the handbag.
But where did you deposit the handbag?
Do not ask me, Mr. Worthing.
Miss Prism, this is a matter of no small importance to me. I insist on knowing where you deposited the handbag that contained that infant.
I left it in the cloakroom of one of the larger railway stations in London.
What railway station?
Victoria, the Brighton line.
I must retire to my room for a moment. Kaetlyn, wait here for me.
If you are not too long, I will wait for you all my life.
What do you think this means, Lady Bracknell?
I dare not even suspect, Dr. Chasuble. I need hardly tell you that in families of high position, strange coincidences are not supposed to occur. They are hardly considered as a thing.
Uncle Jack seems strangely agitated.
Your guardian has a very emotional nature.
This noise is extremely unpleasant. It sounds as though he was having an argument. I dislike arguments of any kind. They are always vulgar and often convincing.
It has stopped now.
I wish he would arrive at some conclusion.
The suspense is terrible. I hope it will last.
Miss Prism, is this the handbag? Examine it carefully before you speak. The happiness of more than one life depends on your answer.
It seems to be mine. Yes. Here's the injury it received for the upsetting of a Gower Street omnibus in younger and happier days. And here on the lining is the stain caused by the explosion of a temperance beverage, an incident that occurred in Leamington. And here on the lock are my initials. I had forgotten that in an extravagant moment I had them placed there. The bag is undoubtedly mine. I'm delighted to have it so unexpectedly restored to me. It has been a great inconvenience being without it all these years.
Miss Prism, more has been restored to you than this handbag. I was the baby you placed in it.
You?
Yes, Mother.
Mr. Worthing! I am unmarried.
Unmarried. I do not deny it is a serious blow, but after all, who has the right to cast a stone against one who has suffered? Cannot repentance wipe out the act of folly? Why should there be one law for men and another for women? Mother, I forgive you.
Mr. Worthing, I believe there is some error. There is the lady who can tell you who you really are.
Lady Bracknell, I hate to seem inquisitive, but would you kindly inform me who I am?
I am afraid that the news I have to give you will not altogether please you. You are the son of my poor sister, Mrs. Moncrief, and consequently Algernon's elder brother.
Alger's elder brother? Then I have ever doubted that I had a brother? Oh, Dr. Chasuble, my unfortunate brother. Oh, Miss Prism, my unfortunate brother. Oh, Gwendolyn, my unfortunate brother. Algy, you don't scandal. You ought to treat me with more respect in the future. You've never behaved like a brother to me in all your life.
Not till today, old boy, I admit. I did my best, however, though I was out of practice.
Oh,
Mr. Worthing, Mr. Moncrief, as I should call you now. After what has occurred, I feel it is my duty to resign my position in this household. Any inconvenience I may have caused you in your infancy by placing you inadvertently in this handbag, I sincerely apologize for. I really have nothing more to teach, dear Cecily. In the very difficult accomplishment of getting engaged, I fear my sweet and clever pupil has far outstripped her teacher.
A moment, Letitia.
Dr. Chasuble?
Letitia, I have come to the conclusion that the primitive church was in error on certain points. Corrupt readings seem to have crept into the text. I beg to solicit the honor of your hand.
At present moment, words fail me to express my feelings. But I will forward you this evening the last 3 volumes of my diary. In these you may peruse a full account of the sentiments I have entertained for you for the last 18 months.
Oh, my own! Oh, but what own are you? What is your Christian name now that you are someone else?
good heavens! I'd quite forgotten that point. Your decision on the subject of my name is irrevocable, I suppose.
I never change, except in my affections.
What a noble nature you have, Gwendolyn.
Then the question had better be cleared up at once. Aunt Augusta, a moment. At the time when Miss Prism left me in the handbag, had I been christened already?
Every luxury that money could buy, including christening, had been lavished on you by your fond and doting parents.
So, then I was christened. That is settled. Now, what name was I given? Let me know the worst.
Being the eldest son, you were naturally christened after your father.
Yes. And what was my father's Christian name?
I cannot at the present moment recall what the general's Christian name was, but I have no doubt he had one. He was eccentric, I admit, but only in later years, and that was a result of the Indian climate and marriage and indigestion and other things of that kind.
Algy, can't you recollect what our father's Christian name was?
My dear boy, we weren't even on speaking terms. He died before I was a year old.
His name would appear in the army lists of the period, I suppose, Aunt Augusta.
Well, the general was essentially a man of peace, except in his domestic life. But I have no doubt his name would appear in any military directory.
The army lists of the last 40 years are here. These delightful records should have been my constant study. M. Generals, Madam Maxwell Magsley. Ghastly names they have. Martin Mixby Moncrief. Lieutenant 1840, Captain, Lieutenant Colonel, Colonel, General 1869, Christian names. Ernest John. I've always told you, Gwendolyn. My name is Ernest. Didn't I? Well, it is Ernest after all. I mean, it naturally is Ernest.
Yes, I remember now that the general was called Ernest. I knew I had some particular reason for disliking the name.
Oh, my own Ernest! I knew from the start you could have no other name.
Gwendolyn, it is a terrible thing for a man to find out suddenly that all his life he's been speaking nothing but the truth. Do you forgive me?
I can, for I feel you are sure to change.
No, my one.
Letitia, Frederick, at last.
Cecily, at last.
Oh, Gwendolyn, at last.
My nephew, you seem to be displaying signs of triviality.
On the contrary, Aunt Augusta, I have now realized for the first time in my life the vital importance of being earnest.